My daughter called me on a Monday morning and said, "Dad, I signed the papers. The farmhouse is being transferred Friday. You need to have your things out before the new owners come through." I was standing in my kitchen, buttering toast at the same counter I had installed with my own hands in 1987, looking out at the pasture where her mother used to hang sheets on a line and sing old Patsy Cline songs to nobody but the wind. I asked her one question. "Lydia, whose papers did you sign?" She laughed like I was the confused one. "Dad, don't make this harder. You already agreed years ago. You're 68. You can't keep managing that place alone. Evan and I found a buyer." It's done. That was the moment I knew my daughter had forgotten the difference between being loved and being in charge. My name is Calvin Mercer. I'm 68 years old, retired plumbing contractor, widower, father of 2 grown children, and until that Monday morning, I still believed a family could bend without breaking. Maybe some of you know what I mean. Maybe you have a son or daughter who started calling your home the property. Maybe you have heard your own children discuss your future like you weren't still standing in it. If you have, then sit with me for a little while, because this story is not about a house. It is about what happens when the people you raised start counting your money before they count your heart. The Mercer farmhouse sits outside Red Willow, Missouri, about 6 miles past the old feed mill and 2 miles before the road turns gravel. It is white clapboard with green shutters, a wraparound porch, and a red barn that leans just enough to look stubborn but not enough to fall. My wife, Elaine, and I bought it in 1984 with a loan so ugly it made the banker apologize when he handed me the paperwork. Elaine loved that house before the ink dried. She said the kitchen had morning light, and that was all she needed. I told her morning light didn't pay a mortgage. She kissed me on the cheek and said, "No, but it gives a man a reason to get up and pay one." That was Elaine. We raised 2 children there. Our son, Mason, was the quiet one, careful with words, always watching the room before he entered it. Lydia was the storm. Smart, beautiful, impatient, the kind of girl who learned early that confidence could open doors, manners could not. When they were little, that farmhouse was a kingdom. Mason built forts out by the creek. Lydia named every chicken like it was a guest at a wedding. Elaine kept jars of blackberry jam lined across the pantry shelves, and every August the house smelled like sugar, fruit, and sweat. Then the years did what years do. They took the children. They took Elaine. Cancer got her in 2018. Slow at first, and then all at once. Her last good summer was spent on that porch, wrapped in a blue quilt, telling me which flowers needed deadheading as if she was still planning next spring. After she passed, the farmhouse got too quiet. I will not lie about that. There were evenings I set 2 plates without thinking. There were mornings I heard her slippers in the hallway and turned before I remembered. But grief and loneliness are not the same as weakness. That is something grown children forget. Lydia forgot first. By 2025, she was 41, married to a real estate developer named Evan Drake, a man with shiny shoes, expensive teeth, and a handshake that always felt like it was checking your pulse for profit. Mason was 38, divorced, working as a high school shop teacher in Columbia, doing his best and apologizing too much for things he had not done. I loved them both. I still do. A father does not stop loving because his children disappoint him. But love does not require blindness. Lydia started asking questions that year. Not honest questions. Not daughter questions. Asset questions. "Dad, have you thought about downsizing? Dad, do you know what that land is worth now? Dad," Evan says developers are paying crazy money for acreage near Red Willow. At Thanksgiving, while I was carving turkey, she said, "It's not practical for you to keep living like this." I looked up from the cutting board. "Living like what?" She smiled at me the way people smile when they have mistaken politeness for patience. "Alone, on 36 acres, with stairs, and livestock fencing, and that old barn." "The barn's older than you," I said. "Still standing?" Evan chuckled. "For now." Nobody else laughed. Mason looked down at his plate. Elaine would have seen that. She would have tapped his wrist and made him lift his eyes. I missed her most in moments like that, when the room needed a kind voice with a spine inside it. I said nothing that day. Not because I had nothing to say, but because age teaches a man the value of letting people reveal themselves. In January, Lydia began sending me listings for senior condos in Springfield. In February, she brought brochures from a retirement community. In March, Evan offered to take some burden off my plate by having his office run a valuation on the farm. I told them no, plainly, clearly, once. We were sitting at my kitchen table when I said it. I am not selling this house. I am not transferring this land. I am not moving into any facility while I can still walk to my mailbox and cook my own breakfast. Do you both understand me? Lydia tightened her mouth. Evan leaned back and folded his hands. Calvin, he said, using my first name like we were business partners. Sometimes parents make emotional decisions that hurt the next generation. I looked at him for a long second. Evan, sometimes sons-in-law talk too much. Mason coughed into his napkin. Lydia's eyes went cold. You're being selfish, she said. No, I said. I'm being alive. That should have ended it. It did not. 2 months later, my bank called. Not the branch. Not the teller who knew me. The fraud department. A woman named Denise said there had been an inquiry about a home equity line of credit on my property. The application had been started online. My name was on it. My social security number was correct. My address was correct. But the email listed was not mine. I asked Denise to read it. She did. It was Evan's business email. There are moments when anger arrives hot. This one arrived cold. It moved through me slowly, from my chest to my hands, until my fingers were steady in a way that almost scared me. I thanked Denise. I told her to freeze any application tied to my property. Then I hung up and sat very still. Brothers and sisters, listen to me here. When your child hurts your feelings, you can call it family trouble. When your child or their spouse starts using your identity to reach your house, that is not family trouble anymore. That is paperwork. And paperwork has consequences. I drove to Jefferson City the next morning to see my attorney, Harold Whitcomb. Harold was 72, bald, narrow-eyed, and still wore suspenders like a man who distrusted belts on principle. He had handled Elaine's estate and every contract I ever signed after 1992. Harold did not raise his voice. He did not need to. His disappointment could make a notary sweat. I laid everything out. The retirement brochures, the developer talk, the bank call, Evan's email, Lydia's pressure, Mason's silence. Harold listened without interrupting. When I finished, he removed his glasses, polished them with a cloth, and said, Calvin, how much do they know about the trust? They know Elaine and I made one. How much do they know about the amendment from 2019? I looked out his window at the courthouse across the street. Nothing. Harold nodded. In 2019, a year after Elaine died, I had done something I never told my children about. I amended the Mercer family trust. The farmhouse and 36 acres stayed mine for life. Upon my death, Mason and Lydia would inherit only if neither had attempted to force a sale, misuse my identity, challenge my capacity without medical evidence, or interfere with my right to occupy the home. Elaine and I had talked about something like that before she passed. She had seen the way Lydia changed around money. She had seen Evan for what he was, before I did. Protect the house from ambition, she told me once. So I did. There was another part, too. A quiet part. A part nobody knew except Harold. 15 acres behind the creek. The section everyone called useless bottomland had been leased 3 years earlier to a conservation group working with the county on a wetlands restoration project. That lease included a purchase option, triggered only if I chose to sell or upon my death if the trust beneficiaries were disqualified. The option price had been updated 6 months before Lydia's call. $870,000. Not for developers. Not for condos. Not for Evan Drake's little kingdom of beige townhomes. For protected land, walking trails, and a scholarship fund in Elaine's name for rural kids going into trade schools. Lydia and Mason were supposed to split everything. The house, the land, the proceeds, the memories. But there are doors you close from the inside. Harold leaned back in his chair. Do you want me to send a warning letter? Not yet, I said. He studied me. You're thinking ahead. I learned from a good woman. She would tell you to be careful. She would tell me to be fair. I said. Careful came naturally to her. Harold almost smiled. Then be fair. Give Lydia one more chance. Make it clear. Document it. So I did. That Sunday, I invited both my children to lunch. Evan came with Lydia, though I had not invited him. Mason came alone, wearing a flannel shirt and the guilty look of a man who knew a storm was waiting, but came anyway. I made pot roast, Elaine's recipe, though mine never tasted like hers. We ate politely for 12 minutes before Lydia put down her fork. Dad, we need to talk about the farm. No, I said. She blinked. I haven't even said anything. You have said plenty. I will say this once more, in front of your brother and your husband. I am not selling. I am not moving. I do not consent to any loan, transfer, listing, option, or development tied to my home. If any of you put my name on another document without my permission, I will treat it as fraud. Mason went pale. Evan's jaw moved. Lydia laughed under her breath. Fraud? Dad, listen to yourself. We're trying to help you. A person who is helping knocks on the door, I said. They don't climb through a window. Evan leaned forward. With respect, Calvin, you are emotionally attached to an inefficient asset. Lydia has durable power of attorney language from the healthcare packet you signed years ago. We can at least begin planning. No, I said. He stopped. That power of attorney was revoked in 2019, I said. Harold recorded the revocation and sent copies to the bank, my doctor, and the county clerk. It gives your wife no authority over my property, my accounts, or my body. Lydia stared at me. You revoked it? Yes. Without telling me? I just told you. Her face changed then. Not sadness, not hurt, something harder, something that had been hiding behind concern. You're going to ruin everything, she said. There it is, I said softly. What? See, the truth wearing its own clothes. She stood so fast her chair scraped the floor. Fine, keep your rotting farmhouse, but don't expect us to clean up the mess when you fall down those stairs. Mason flinched like she had slapped him. Evan put his napkin on the table and smiled at me. You're making a mistake. No, I said. I'm giving you a warning. They left without dessert. Mason stayed behind. He helped me clear plates, quiet as a boy. At the sink, he said, Dad, I didn't know about the bank thing. I believe you. I knew Lydia was talking to Evan about development. I thought it was just talk. You are old enough to know talk becomes paper if nobody stops it. He nodded. His eyes were wet, but he did not let the tears fall. I should have said something sooner. Yes, I said. You should have. That hurt him. It was supposed to. Truth without pain is just decoration. 3 weeks passed. Then the Monday morning call came. Dad, I signed the papers. The farmhouse is being transferred Friday. My toast went cold, while Lydia explained her version of the world. She said Evan had found a private buyer. She said the buyer understood there were family title complications, but was willing to move fast. She said I had become unpredictable. She said she was doing what Mom would have wanted. That was the only time my voice rose. Do not bring your mother into this. Silence. Then Lydia said, You have until Friday. I looked out at Elaine's clothesline, still standing though I had not used it in years. Lydia, I said, you forgot one thing. What are you talking about? The same thing your husband forgot. Authority. She sighed. Dad, we're past this. No, I said. You are past listening. That is not the same thing. I hung up. Then I called Harold. He answered on the second ring. She did it? He asked. She says, Friday. Harold exhaled through his nose. Send me everything. By noon, Harold had discovered the shape of it. Evan had prepared an assignment of purchase interest, not a clean deed transfer. He had found an investor named Clayton Voss, a man who bought distressed rural properties and turned them into storage units, RV lots, or subdivisions depending on zoning. Lydia had signed as authorized family representative, attaching an old copy of the revoked power of attorney. Evan had also signed a sworn statement, claiming I had verbally agreed, but was experiencing memory fluctuation. Memory fluctuation. That phrase sat in my mouth like rust. By Wednesday, Clayton Voss had scheduled a site visit at the farmhouse with Evan, Lydia, a mobile notary, and a title consultant. They expected me to sign final acknowledgement or, failing that, be declared an obstructing occupant while they filed for emergency review of capacity. Harold read the documents aloud in his office, each sentence uglier than the last. When he finished, he looked at me. "This is sloppy, but it is dangerous. They are trying to build a record that you are confused." I nodded. "Then let them bring their record to my kitchen." Harold frowned. "Calvin, I warned her. You did. I documented it. You did. Then Friday, we finish it." He leaned back slowly. "You want them all there?" "I do." "Voss too?" "Especially Voss." Harold was quiet for a long time. Then he opened a drawer, took out a fresh legal pad, and wrote one word at the top: Friday. The rest of that week moved strangely, fast on the clock, slow in the bones. I cleaned the kitchen. I swept the porch. I oiled the hinges on the front door because Elaine hated squeaks. I walked the fence line at dusk and remembered Lydia, at 7 years old, running through the grass with her hair full of burrs, yelling for me to watch her jump the ditch. Lord, children can become strangers and still carry the face of someone you once lifted onto your shoulders. On Thursday evening, Mason came by. He stood on the porch with a brown paper bag. "I brought pie," he said. "What kind?" "Apple." "Store-bought?" "Yes, sir. Your mother would haunt you. Your mother would haunt you." "I know." We sat at the kitchen table and ate bad pie with good coffee. After a while, Mason said, "Lydia called me. She said if I don't support her, I'm choosing you over her." I took a sip. "And what did you say?" He looked at the table. "I said she was making that easier than she thought." That was the first time in months I felt something in my chest unclench. Friday morning came bright and cold, the kind of cold that makes fence wire sing when the wind hits it. They arrived at 9:03. Lydia first, stepping out of Evan's black SUV in a cream coat and sunglasses too large for the weather. Evan came around the driver's side, carrying a leather portfolio. Clayton Voss pulled in behind them in a silver pickup, bald head shining, boots too clean for a man standing on a farm. A woman with a notary bag climbed out of his passenger seat, followed by a title consultant I later learned was named Marcy Bell. Mason arrived last. He parked by the barn, got out slowly, and stood near the gate with his hands in his jacket pockets. Lydia looked at him, then at me. "You invited him?" "He's family," I said. She glanced at Harold's sedan parked under the oak tree. "And Harold?" "He's my attorney." Evan smiled thinly. "That won't be necessary if everyone stays reasonable." Harold stepped onto the porch behind me, buttoning his overcoat. "Mr. Drake," he said, "in my experience, people who misuse revoked legal documents rarely get to define reasonable." Evan's smile disappeared. We all went into the kitchen. It was the same kitchen where Elaine had packed school lunches, where Lydia had cried over a broken prom corsage, where Mason had told us he wanted to teach instead of take over my plumbing business. Now there were folders on the table, strangers by the coffee pot, and my daughter standing where her mother used to stand, trying to sell the room out from under me. Clayton Voss did not waste time. "Mr. Mercer, I understand emotions are high. I'm not here to get into family matters. I'm here to finalize a transaction your daughter represented as authorized." "My daughter represented many things," I said. "That doesn't make them true." Lydia folded her arms. "Dad, please don't embarrass yourself." I looked at her. "I am not the one who brought a notary to steal a kitchen." The notary's eyes widened. Marcy Bell looked down at her folder. Evan opened his portfolio. "Calvin, this is unproductive. We have a signed authorization from Lydia based on durable power of attorney executed in 2017. Revoked in 2019, Harold said. Evan hesitated half a second too long. Harold placed the revocation on the table. County stamp. Certified copy. Date clear as sunrise. Marcy Bell leaned forward. "May I see that?" Harold slid it to her. She read. Then she looked at Evan. "This should have been disclosed." Evan said, "We were not aware of." "You attached the old POA," Harold said. "You did not verify whether it remained active. That is either incompetence or intent. Choose whichever one helps you sleep." Clayton Voss turned slowly toward Evan. "Is this true?" Lydia snapped, It doesn't matter. I'm his daughter. He wanted me to handle things. No, I said. He wanted to handle things. Her cheeks flushed. Dad, you are not thinking clearly. There it was. The line they needed. The line Harold had told me might come. He reached into his briefcase and removed another document. This is a letter from Dr. Amelia Grant, Mr. Mercer's primary physician of 18 years, dated yesterday. It states he is medically competent to manage his affairs, make property decisions, execute legal documents, and refuse assistance. Attached is a cognitive screening performed this week. Lydia went still. Evan whispered, "You went to a doctor?" I laughed once, quietly. Son, when people plan to call you confused, it helps to arrive with proof you are not. Mason looked away. I think he was trying not to smile. Clayton Voss pushed his chair back. I was told this was a clean family transfer. It was never clean, Harold said. And it was never a transfer. Marcy Bell closed her folder. I cannot proceed with anything here. The notary zipped her bag. Lydia stared at the table, breathing hard. Evan stood. Mr. Voss, let's step outside and discuss options. No, Voss said. My option is leaving before my name gets deeper into whatever this is. Then Harold placed one more paper on the table. Before anyone leaves, there is something Miss Mercer and Mr. Drake need to understand. Lydia looked at him with contempt. What now? Harold turned the page toward her. This is the Mercer Family Trust Amendment executed in 2019. It contains a disqualification clause. Evan's eyes changed. He knew enough legal language to be afraid of that phrase. Harold continued. Any beneficiary who attempts to force sale, transfer, encumbrance, occupancy removal, capacity challenge, or unauthorized control of trust property during Mr. Mercer's lifetime is removed as successor beneficiary. The kitchen went so quiet I could hear the refrigerator hum. Lydia said, What does that mean? I answered her. It means you are out. She looked at me like the words had not found meaning yet. Out of what? The trust. Her mouth opened, then closed. No, you can't do that. I already did, Harold said. Her actions on Monday, combined with the attempted use of revoked authority, triggered the clause. I will be filing formal notice this afternoon. Evan sat back down. That gave me more satisfaction than I care to admit. Lydia gripped the back of a chair. What about Mason? Harold looked at Mason, Mr. Mason Mercer did not sign, authorize, initiate, or participate in the attempted transfer. He remains eligible. Lydia turned on her brother. You knew? Mason shook his head. No, but I knew it was wrong. You coward. He flinched, but this time he did not look down. No, he said. I was a coward before. Today I showed up. That landed harder than anything I could have said. Lydia's eyes filled, though I could not tell if it was grief, fury, or calculation failing under pressure. You're choosing him, she said to me. I chose my home, I said. You chose a buyer. Clayton Voss muttered something under his breath and headed for the door. Marcy Bell followed. The notary went so fast she nearly forgot her coat. Then it was just family and one attorney. Evan's voice came low. How much? Lydia turned to him. What? He was looking at Harold. How much was the trust worth? Harold looked at me, asking without asking. I nodded. Harold closed his folder. The house and land, as appraised for conservation and residential value combined, approximately $1.3 million. Lydia sat down as if her knees had been cut. Evan whispered, 1.3. That was not a number, I said. It was your mother's garden. It was Mason's Creek. It was your tire swing. It was 36 years of mortgage payments, busted knuckles, Christmas mornings, storm repairs, and your mother's last summer on that porch. My voice almost broke then, but I held it. You turned all of that into a transaction before I was even dead. Lydia covered her mouth. Evan stared at nothing. He was doing the math. Men like him always do the math after they lose the sum. I reached into my shirt pocket and took out a small envelope. I placed it in front of Lydia. She did not touch it. What is that? A copy of the first letter your mother wrote after her diagnosis. Lydia's face changed. She wrote letters? To both of you. She asked me to give them when the time felt right. And this is the right time? She asked bitterly. No, I said. The right time would have been before you did this. But we don't always arrive on time. Her hand shook when she opened it. Elaine's handwriting was still Elaine's handwriting. Slanted, careful, pretty without trying. Lydia read silently. Her face crumpled halfway through. I knew the sentence that did it because it had nearly split me open the first time I read it. Don't let ambition make you treat your father like an obstacle. He is not the thing standing between you and a good life. He is part of the reason you had one. Lydia pressed the page to her chest. For one small second, she was my little girl again. Then Evan ruined it. This is emotional manipulation, he said. Mason took one step toward him. Say one more thing about my mother. Evan looked at him, measured the room, and chose silence. Smartest thing he did all day. I stood up. I am tired. Lydia looked up. Dad. No, you will listen now. I gave you warnings. I gave you Sunday dinners. I gave you the benefit of the doubt longer than you deserved. You brought strangers into your mother's kitchen to take my house using a revoked document and a lie about my mind. She started crying then. I thought I was helping. No, I said gently. You thought you were entitled. Helping asks. Entitlement arranges. She bowed her head. I turned to Evan. You are not welcome on this property again unless I invite you. He stood slowly. Lydia, let's go. She did not move. That was the first crack in his control. Lydia. She looked at him, then at me, then at Mason. I need a minute. Evan's face hardened. You heard your father. We're not welcome. No, she said quietly. He said you weren't. Mason stared at her. So did I. Evan left without another word. His SUV threw gravel halfway down the drive. Lydia stayed at the kitchen table, holding Elaine's letter. She cried for a long time. Not pretty crying. Not the kind people do when they want forgiveness. The ugly kind where something inside has finally stopped pretending. I did not hug her. Not then. Forgiveness is holy, but it is not cheap. People confuse those things. Harold left after making sure I was all right. Mason stayed on the porch. Lydia and I sat in the kitchen until the morning turned into afternoon. Finally, she said, Is there any way back? I looked at my daughter, my storm child, my baby girl who had grown into a woman I could barely recognize and still somehow loved with the same old heart. Yes, I said, but not to the trust, not today. Maybe not ever. She nodded like she expected that. What way then? Truth. Apology. Time. No paperwork. A weak laugh came out of her. That sounds harder. It is. She wiped her face with both hands. I'm sorry, Dad. I know. I'm sorry I used Mom. That hurt worst. She closed her eyes. I know. Mason came inside just after 2. He made coffee. Burned it. Somehow, though the machine did most of the work. Elaine would have laughed herself sick. We drank it anyway. Lydia left around 3, alone. Evan had not come back for her. Mason drove her to town. Before she got in his truck, she stopped at the porch steps and looked back at the house. I forgot how quiet it is here, she said. No, I told her. You forgot how to hear it. A month passed before I heard from her again. Not a demand, not a plan, not a listing. A letter, handwritten. She told me Evan had been furious. She told me they were separating. She admitted the home equity inquiry had been his idea, but she had known enough not to be innocent. She said that sentence in Elaine's letter had followed her into every room. She did not ask for the trust back. That mattered. Mason started coming by every Saturday. At first he said it was to help with the barn roof, then the fence, then the gutters. After a while he stopped inventing reasons. He just showed up, and I let him. In April, Lydia came too. She brought work gloves and did not wear sunglasses. She helped clear brush by the creek, scratched her arm on blackberry thorns, and said nothing when it bled. At lunch, she ate a sandwich on the porch steps like she had when she was 12. We did not fix everything. Don't let anyone sell you that kind of ending. Families do not shatter in one day, and they do not heal in one either. But some beginnings look like a daughter pulling weeds from her mother's garden without being asked. As for Evan Drake, Clayton Voss filed a complaint with the State Real Estate Commission after discovering Evan had represented authority he did not have. The bank kept records of the attempted loan application. Harold sent a letter that used words like misrepresentation, revoked instrument, and potential elder financial abuse. Evan's attorney answered quickly and politely, which is how you know a man has been told to stop digging. The farmhouse is still mine. The red barn still leans. The clothesline still stands, though last week Lydia brought new rope for it. She said it looked tired. I told her tired things can still hold. The Mercer family trust remains amended. Mason is still in. Lydia is not, for now. The conservation option remains in place, and the Elaine Mercer Trade Scholarship has already received its first private donation from an anonymous donor in Colombia, though Mason denies knowing anything about it. I am not foolish enough to think a document can protect a heart. It can't. But it can protect a home while the heart decides what it is willing to risk again. Sometimes, I sit on that porch at sunset and think about Elaine. I think about what she would have said watching Lydia cry in that kitchen, watching Mason finally stand upright, watching me become the kind of man who brings a legal trap to a family table. She might have scolded me. She might have been proud. Knowing Elaine, she would have done both, then told me to oil the screen door because it squeaks like a dying raccoon, so I oiled it. And yesterday, when the wind moved across the pasture, and the house settled into itself the way old houses do, I heard Lydia laughing by the garden while Mason tried to start the old tiller. For the first time in years, the farm did not sound empty. It sounded unfinished. And at my age, brothers and sisters, unfinished is not such a bad thing. Sometimes, protecting what we built is not about shutting people out, but about giving love a safe place to become honest again. Calvin guarded his home, but he also left room for truth, apology, and small repairs of the heart. When family remembers to ask before taking, gratitude can find its way back to the porch.